It's 3 o'clock, so I think we're going to get started. My name is Wendy Custer. I am the Member Relations Manager at the Chamber of Commerce, and we're happy to have Kellye Remshifski. Did I say that right? Very
You
good.
did.
Of Doylestown Health to present Don't Stress the Small Stuff. It Could Kill You. As the presentation's going on, if you have some questions, you want to put them in the chat box. We will try and answer them at the end. So Kellye,
all right,
over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So as she said, my name is Kellye Remshifski. Wendy, I commend you. I've counted on one hand since I've gotten married how many people said that right. So good job. It was exactly how you say it. But yes, I am the Wellness and Outreach Manager at Doylestown Health, and I am super excited to present to you guys today. I feel that this, and I think the other presentation that is simultaneously running is on mindfulness or meditation or something like that. And it is just so relevant. It was relevant before COVID, learning how not to stress. And then the world seemed to say, we're going to give you another little notch of stress. And then they added that, and everything else happening in the world has really exemplified the stress that we already had. And so I am really excited about this. I hope that you end up leaving this presentation with takeaways, on what you can do for just heal your stress. And so I do have to say this title came from a book. It's called Don't Stress the Small Stuff, and it's all small stuff. Except I don't think everything is small stuff. So I went a little bit extreme. So I said, don't stress the small stuff. It could kill you. Okay. So we're going to try and explain what stress does in the body so that you can see, and recognize what's happening as it's happening and heal yourself on the way. And so the very first thing I want to do before we get into anything is do this calm video. And so it's just a breathing technique. I commend everyone on the chamber panel who put this together, because I have been on other virtual conferences that haven't been as fun. And so I was thinking more we'd all be a little stressed out. And so that last game was perfect, a good recap in. But I would love for you to follow the prompt on the screen. It's just going to ask you to breathe in and out. We all do that already. And as we do it, just kind of focus on your breathing, let everything else relax. It's only 30 seconds, and then we'll get right into it. I'm going to do it. All right. So that was pretty easy, right? How did you guys feel? I don't think I can see the chat box, but type in the chat box how you felt. Hopefully that was calming. For some people, relaxing is stressful. So some of you might be like, oh, even that 30 seconds was too much for me. I completely understand that. Before I really got into wellness, doing stress reducing activities was painful, right? And so I hope I didn't raise your stress. I hope you recognize that, like, as you listen to the noises and the sounds and focus on your breathing, it did bring your heart rate down a little bit. But while I brought it down, I'm just going to bring it right back up, because we're just going to talk about stress. And so I don't want to harp too much on stress. A lot of us already know what it is, but I think it's really important to understand that stress in its most basic form, the definition is a non-specific response of the body to any demand or change. And so Hans Selye actually is the doctor who really found that pretty much anything that you are doing that isn't just laying down is stressful on the body. So even things you do, your body is constantly trying to maintain homeostasis and get it into a relaxed state. And so any type of demand on the body is technically stressing the body. And so that's really important because you'll realize your body is always working and trying to keep you alive and moving, and that is stressful. But most of us think of stress as good or bad stress, right? And so good stress is actually really good. Short-term stress is beneficial to the body. A lot of us are probably thinking, my stress is long-term, and we'll get to that in a second. But short stress is the moments where you need to make a really quick decision. So, okay, you're driving down 611 and you pass Chick-fil-A and you're like, should I get dinner or should I not get dinner? And then you pull over really quick. So that is short stress, those really short moments. And I hope you all like Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever, you do you. But those are short stressors, right? They start and end very quickly. And so those type of stressors improve your cognitive function. And so as you have to meet deadlines, say for work, there's a really big project, the closer you get and the more stress you feel in those moments is actually helping your body help your mind hyper focus on that task at hand, and is improving your cognitive function, which allows you to maintain information easier. Have you ever noticed you do have to get up and do a presentation? Before the presentation, you might not have been able to remember things, but as it gets closer, you remember those finer details. It's because your cognitive function is working better. Also, to that note, short-term stressful events cause the brain to make new nerve cells, which improve mental performance later on. So down here, when new nerve cells are created, that's going to help you in the future. And lastly, short-term stress raises your self-efficacy when you are successful. So self-efficacy is just your own ability to believe you can do something. And so say you are running a race and you're not really sure if you can run the 5K. When you are successful in completing that 5K, all that stress and all those new nerve cells that you've created tell you your next 5K is going to be easy and you can do it, and you won't have that heightened awareness of being stressed out before the event. So there are good uses to stress, but what most of us think about stress is the bad stress, because I think Americans just wear a badge of honor of being stressed out, like who can sleep the least and who can be the most stressed out. But I am telling you and promising you, and I'm sure you've heard this all the time, is that long-term stress is bad, right? It's not healthy on us. And to drive home that point, it affects all systems of the body, okay? So that includes your muscles, your respiratory, your cardiovascular, your endocrine, which we'll get into, your gastrointestinal, which we'll talk about, your nervous system, and your reproductive system. So it basically affects every system in your body. And what happens, most of us know the fight or flight syndrome, and how it used to be really great for our caveman ancestors or cavewoman ancestors. But what happens is when you get into these long stressful periods, your body is just pumping out hormones. And the hormones are cortisol, which is, it's cortisol, adrenaline, or epinephrine, and that's responsible for the fight or flight, and then norepinephrine. And so what happens is these hormones travel through the body, and then they start damaging your vessels and they start damaging your heart. They also increase inflammation. And this is a buzzword right now. It's been a buzzword for the past few years. It's one of the reasons, if you hear studies on sugar and a lot of high carb foods, these things that you're eating and or things you're doing are causing inflammation in the body. And inflammation does lead to long-term chronic diseases. So things like cardiovascular disease, things like diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, stuff like that is caused by increased inflammation in the body. And so when we are constantly under stress, if you are in a high power job, or you have 5 little kids running, if you have 5 little kids, good for you. But if you have 5 little kids running around you right now during COVID, or maybe you can't even see your family during COVID and it's been, since March and you're under this stress, that is causing your body to react. And so these reactions can lead to things like increased heart rate, higher blood sugar levels. It's not always what you're eating that increases your blood sugar. Increased breathing rate. When we are stressed, we breathe shallower, which means we're not deep breathing into our gut, which is what we need to do. We have increased muscle tensions, which leads to other things, which we'll talk about. And like I said, we have increased inflammation in the circulatory system. So as you can see, stress is not wonderful. Long-term stress is not wonderful. Short-term stress is okay. And we'll, in the healing part, kind of see how we can take a look at that stress and determine how we should be reacting to it. And so I thought it was very important to talk about how stress affects women differently. And when research started, a lot of the participants were men. So a lot of old studies and medicine and things like that are based off the male, physiology, physique, all of that stuff. And we know now the past 10, 15, 20 years that women are different than men. I think you and I could have told someone that, but we do react differently. And so I just want to encourage you in this part is that if you feel that you are having different symptoms and maybe you have a male doctor who doesn't understand, you should advocate for yourself because different things are happening in your body. And so stress affects women specifically with these 5 things. We do them more. So for example, women do get more headaches and migraines. And so, hold on, let me get over here real quick. Okay. So women do get more headaches and migraines. And so these are the different types of headaches. TMJ is the headaches that you kind of feel around your jaw. Sometimes it goes a little bit into these temple areas. Tension headaches kind of surround your head. Sinus headaches, if you have sinus issues, all about sinus headaches. Neck headaches, a lot of times that stems from being tense. Like I said in the other slide, you get muscle tension and you kind of bring up your neck when you're tensed out. Cluster headaches are really around one side of your eye, and then migraines. If you've had a migraine because everything is affecting you at all times. And so if you feel like, oh my gosh, my significant other is not having this issue and I keep getting these headaches, it's most likely because you are a woman and we do deal with this more frequently than men. But this just means all the more power to you now that you can go to your doctor and not feel like it's in your head. You actually probably are stressed out and causing these. And that is what's causing it. Depression and anxiety. So women are twice more likely than men to have depression, and they are more likely to be diagnosed with an anxiety disorder like PTSD, OCD, and panic disorder is the other one that women are more likely to be diagnosed with, mainly because women are more likely to ruminate. So ruminating, if you haven't heard of it, is essentially continually going over a problem without a conclusion. So for example, I can think of, oh my gosh, during COVID, we were in charge of door duty. So it was right at the beginning of COVID, and we had to screen everyone coming in the door. We could only let employees in the door that we were at. The other people had to go upstairs. You know, it was a whole shebang. And I remember thinking, someone got by me. It was okay. It's just someone in the cafeteria. It's not dramatic, okay? But I kept thinking, oh my gosh, why wasn't I more stern? Or why wasn't I better at doing X, Y, and Z? Or why didn't I catch them before? And I'm driving down the road, and 20 minutes into my drive, I was like, why am I still talking about this? It is not an issue. But that is what ruminating is like. You are constantly going over a problem, and you cannot stop the cycle of going over that problem. And so women definitely do this more. Men tend to be able to cut it off and not think about it, or they've found a solution and they accept that solution, which does cut the cycle of rumination. Upset stomach. So women are more likely to be diagnosed with IBS or IBD. Sometimes I question the research on that. Is it because women are more likely to go to a doctor? That's always a debate in the back of my mind, but women will say are more likely to be at least diagnosed with these issues. And so short-term stress, some of you might have short-term stress issues where if you're put on the spot and have to make a decision, you might get, diarrhea, or you might throw up. That might be a short-term stressor. Definitely happens. Long-term stress, we see, really changes the gut completely. And that is really important. And a lot of important research is coming out because the gut talks to the brain. And so the gut has hundreds of millions of neurons, and it does independently function from the brain, but at the same time they talk, if that makes sense. And that's one of the reasons why you can feel butterflies, right? So you're so excited you can feel butterflies, right? But you feel it in your stomach. And so that's your gut connection with the brain. They're talking to each other. On top of all the neurons, your gut has millions of bacteria. And so these neurons are essentially talking to the bacteria, and it actually changes your bacteria. And that's really an issue when you are stressed, because that lowers your immunity. So you're already putting yourself at risk to become sick, or it affects your digestion. So the lining wall on your intestines have a pretty thick lining, right? But when you are stressed out, it actually eats away at that lining, and it causes it to be weaker. And what happens is food can go in and out of your intestinal lining, which it's not meant to do. And so when food leaves the intestines and enters the bloodstream, you now have a whole different issue, which, can be diagnosed by a GI. It's a few simple tests, but you are causing digestion issues, or stress can cause digestion issues. We know that when your gut isn't healthy from stress, it's affecting your mental health. So some people think it's just mental health that stress is taking an effect on, but sometimes you might feel mentally capable, but it's actually your stomach talking to your brain. And it's so crazy what research is saying. For example, there is a study who just came out, and it followed this girl who, she was a younger girl, and she was perfectly fine, bubbly, happy teenager. All of a sudden, her attitude started to change. You know what you're thinking, it's not just a hormonal teenager, that wasn't the issue, but her attitudes started to change, and they found out a couple months later, like her sleep was disrupted, she just wasn't feeling good, and her attitude had changed. And they went to the doctor, and what they found out is that she actually had small intestine bacterial overgrowth, which is just, well, actually it is that. It's just basically bacteria in your small intestine. And when they cleared that out, you have to do a couple rounds of antibiotics and stuff. When they cleared it out, perfectly fine again. Her attitude changed back. She felt happy again. Her sleep went back. So it's really crazy how much your gut is related to everything else that's happening in your body. But the problem is if you're stressed, you're taking down that barrier wall, which causes other issues. Stress also causes issues with hormones, right? So decreased libido, irregular menstrual cycles, infertility. I mean, if your menstrual cycles aren't on a consistent cycle, you are naturally going to have infertility issues. But sometimes you can be regular and still have infertility issues. It can cause mood swings and hot flashes, right? So stress is changing your hormones to give you these terrible things that are just going to stress you out more, and it's this vicious cycle. So in those cases, definitely talk to your OBGYN, because they can run some blood tests for you, or an endocrinologist. And then there's always rumination. And so I just want to encourage you as a woman to take these signs and symptoms seriously. If you know you're getting consistent headaches that you didn't used to get, take a look at your stress levels. Pull back and say, what is causing these? And if it is stress, we'll work on healing that. And so the other thing that stress causes is heart issues. And so I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because while Susan G. Komen is a great institution, I actually interned with them for a summer, there is still a very big misconception that breast cancer is the #1 killer of women. And that is not true. It is heart disease. Heart disease kills women. 1 in 5 women's deaths is related to heart disease. And so it's important to know, again, that your biology is a little bit different than a male's. Now, how it happens is sort of the same, which we'll get to. But essentially, a heart attack is just when your heart isn't getting enough blood and the blood isn't bringing the oxygen to your heart muscle. And so it can be either severely reduced or completely cut off. And this is a great image. It's very simple. As you can see, the little blood is going through the arteries, and this is plaque buildup. And so that's called atherosclerosis. Just call it plaque buildup. It's a long word. But what happens is as this plaque builds up, your arteries get smaller and smaller and smaller, which means there's less and less blood getting to the heart. Now, the good thing is your body wants to survive, right? Your heart is a very important muscle. And so other arteries actually start diverting the blood to get to your heart to help you recover. However, because of this, you rarely have any signs or symptoms before you have a heart attack, and except for high blood pressure. You don't have signs of atherosclerosis. So unless you're checking your blood pressure or you have a family history, you probably aren't going to know when a heart attack's coming. A heart attack does occur every 40 seconds in the United States. And the good news is most people will recover. It is about an 8-week recovery. You're probably going to do cardiac rehab. There's so many different procedures and medicines that your cardiologist will talk to you about. But the good news is you most likely will recover, especially if you're younger and have this issue. So that's the good news. What most people consider heart attacks are probably sudden cardiac arrest, which is different than a heart attack. A heart attack can cause sudden cardiac arrest, but that's when you see people clutch their chest and fall over. That is what you need to do CPR on. So that is more of an electrical issue in the body. Something happened and your heart just stopped beating. Yes, that's what you're going to do CPR on. And so how can you kind of gauge like your risk for a heart attack? Well, your stress levels for sure, your high blood pressure levels are going to be an indicator. Like I said earlier, when you are stressed, your blood vessels constrict. And so you have that issue happening. But a lot of times it's more than just the hormones. It's the environment that you're in that is causing plaque buildup. So things like drinking too much, right? That's going to lead to an increased risk for a heart attack. Not exercising, high carb foods. Like I said, high carb foods, as wonderful as they are, do lead to inflammation. That's not to say you can't eat mac and cheese once a week. Probably not 6 days a week, but once a week would be fine. But it's the constant high carb foods. It's the constant high trans fat foods. And then reduction in sleep. So sleep is where our body recovers. We need sleep. Like I said, Americans love to talk about how little sleep they get. And I'm not sure why. I personally love sleep. If I get less than 7 hours, you probably shouldn't talk to me the next day, or I need a lot of coffee because I'm not going to make it through the day. So a reduction in sleep is a risk factor for a heart attack later on. And down here, you can see that 40% of women who are stressed were more likely to experience a cardiovascular event. So again, it's not just the stress per se, it's the things that you tend to do when you're stressed out to relieve stress that also add into having a cardiovascular event. And so I also need to point out that heart attacks in women are different than heart attacks in men. And I think this is so important. Anyone probably agrees with me that women are much more likely to just or to put things off, in the sense that women are more likely to be taking care of the family or taking care of multiple tasks at one hand. And they might say, oh, this chest pain, it's okay, it's just discomfort. And that's what doctors see. And so most of the time when people come into the ER, the doctors aren't seeing women clutching their chests and saying, oh my gosh, I've had a heart attack. What words they typically hear are words like, I have pain and I have discomfort in my chest. So if hopefully this never happens to you, but if you notice you're using those words along with some of these other things I'm going to talk about, it might be a sign you need to just go to the ER and have it checked out. And so most of the time, women will say, I have pain, I have discomfort in my chest. A lot of times they'll say it comes and goes with exertion, this pain or discomfort. So, you need to get to the kitchen from the bedroom, I'm not sure. And as you're walking to the kitchen, that's when you feel, the pain or discomfort. But as soon as you sit down, 10 minutes later, gone. That's a sign you have less blood flow to your heart. Extreme fatigue for no reason. And so I had a grandmother who kept saying she was just extremely fatigued. No one could understand why. She couldn't even go down the stairs. She had had a heart attack and no one knew. And so I want to point out that if you feel any of those signs or symptoms, you should call 911. You should definitely call 911. So if you have uncomfortable pressure, squeezing, fullness in the center of your chest, pain or discomfort in one or both of your arms radiating down in your neck or jaw, shortness of breath with or without chest discomfort, or breaking out into a cold sweat, nausea, lightheadedness, or fainting. Now, I recognize, especially with COVID and flu season, some of these sound exactly like COVID and flu, but most of the time it's the discomfort in your chest. And my suggestion is you should just let someone else tell you you're not having a heart attack, okay? Instead of trying to gauge yourself, it's a peace of mind that is a better idea. So I am looking at my clock, so I have about 15 minutes. But I'm gonna try and keep it even smaller because I want to give time for questions. So I want to talk about lowering your risk, your stress, right? And so how are you going to reduce your risk for a heart attack or just lower your stress and feel better overall? But before I do that, I'm going to do one more breathing exercise really quick. And so this one is a 4-7-8. You're going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and breathe out for 8. Okay, 7 seconds does not sound hard, but I promise you, it is kind of hard to do that. So I will count for you. If you could just take a second to do this with me. I will count, tell you what to do, and we'll get going. So ready? So you're going to breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, how do you feel? Okay, was the 7 seconds hard? I also find that 8 seconds out is very hard too. I've already let it go by second 5. But you know, something like that is a great belly breather. You know, you fill up your belly, you hold it, let your heart use all that oxygen and blood, and then cycle it out. So those 2 breathing exercises, perfect. You can do them at your house. You can do them at your car. You can do them again while I'm talking, right? Pretty easy to do. And so what we need to do besides breathing exercises is really rethink how we think about stress. And so Hans Sellye, who really developed what stress was, said all these years way back was that it's not the stress that kills you, it's your reaction to stress. And he knew this, you know, a long time ago, and we are just catching up to this now, which is crazy. And so studies show that stress is only bad for you if you believe it's bad for you. And that is very easy to say when, you know, you don't actually have to practice what you preach. But I want to help you think about this in a different way. And so there's a great TED Talk, I can give it to anyone who wants it, but that really explains this and gets into it. But essentially there was a study at Harvard. They had a stress test on participants, and they told some participants to rethink their stress response. It's helpful. So if your breathing rate goes up, you need to think of that as helping get oxygen to your blood and to your brain. You know, if you were, what else happens? If your heart is beating faster, that is just helping your brain think faster. They were taught how to rethink it. And so naturally what happened is those participants did respond better to the stressful events, right? They were less anxious when the stressors in the study came to them. And so that's not new science. But what is new science is that these researchers also studied the actual physical effects in the body of those stress response. And so what happened to these participants was their blood vessels did not constrict. And so if you remember, I said that when you're under stress, your blood vessels do constrict, which leads to heart disease, inflammation, all those things later on down the road. But these participants were actually able to control how their blood vessels constricted or didn't constrict, which is crazy. And this type of reaction is normally only found in stressful events that are joyful or you're really overly happy. You know, things like, say you have a spouse that is coming back or a family member that's coming back from the military. You know how you're like jittery excited, and then when you see them, you're just like overjoyed. That's still stressful. It may not sound stressful, but it's still stressful. But that actually does not constrict your blood vessels. And so just rethinking how you viewed your stress and your stress response changed how the body determined what to do with everything. And so that is incredible. The other thing that happens when you are stressed is your body releases oxytocin. And we don't talk about oxytocin because most people know oxytocin as a happy as like the happy hormone, the cuddle hormone, the people hormone. And so people don't really associate stress with being happy, which is true. So when you're stressed, your body stimulates oxytocin, and oxytocin actually makes you go and want to be in various types of positive social interactions. It makes you want to be around other people. So think about like COVID, and even the people who have like a smaller knit group, or maybe need to recuperate after social interactions, I guarantee you we're feeling the stress of COVID and probably still wanted to be around their friends and families. And that's because oxytocin is being released at all the time and is traveling throughout your body. And so oxytocin gives these things what some studies consider as rose-colored glasses. So you see the world a little differently when you have oxytocin pumping out of you. And so it actually enhances your empathy for others. And so when you see someone hurting, you naturally want to go and help that person or help solve an issue. And the vice versa happens. When you are hurting, oxytocin is telling you, go get help. You need help. Be around people you trust. And so it's so fascinating that our biology is literally giving us a built-in mechanism to get support. We know that social support is the number one indicator of if you're going to be successful in any type of behavior change. If you do not have social support set in place, you will not be successful. And so, think about things like people recovering from addictions, or, things like you just want to lose weight. If all of your friends are eating McDonald's and shakes every single night, and those are your only social support, you're not going to be very successful in losing that weight, will you? So our body is also just showing us this is why we need and value other people when we are in stress. And so what does this have to do with heart attacks? Well, oxytocin is also an anti-inflammatory. And so what happens is as you get to be around people and or help people, it works both ways, you are releasing anti-inflammatory chemicals or substances into your body. And so it actually travels to the heart and regenerates heart cells, not heart cells, it just regenerates cells in the heart. That's probably a bad term, but, and it helps regenerate them. So damage that you've done, your body is saying, hold up, we need to fix this. We feel great. We're going to go and start fixing that. And like I said, inflammation is a huge driver of chronic diseases, but we have this built-in tool to, fix our own issues. So I see that I have 2 minutes because I want to get 5 minutes. I just want to reiterate that rethinking, understanding, like when your body is saying, go get help, it means go get help, right? And we shouldn't be embarrassed, afraid. We should find those friends and family members that are going to help us feel better about ourselves, because our body is just craving that naturally. We didn't do anything. We couldn't have invented it. Our body does it on its own, and that will protect you from stressful events. These are very typical, I want to say, answers for stress reduction, mindfulness, and meditation. I mean, I'm so excited to hear the other person speak when we can get the recordings, because mindfulness and meditation is huge. I won't talk too much about that. Stress reducing apps. You saw a video in the beginning. That Calm video, it was 30 seconds, helped you focus on breathing in, helped you focus on breathing out. I can't see the chat box right now, so I don't know if it stressed you out, but to those people who it didn't stress out, you can find Calm videos. There's apps on your phone. Great things to use. I want to point out LISS. That is low intensity, steady state training. So we are a very HIIT workout. Like, we love fast, quick, hard workouts. But what they're finding is that if you're stressed out, you should not be doing those workouts unless you are a person who is trained in that. LIST workouts, so lower intensity things like going for a walk, gardening, I'm trying to think, like swimming, like simple swimming, not like intense swimming. Those things are better for the body because they're not, what happens when you work out is you actually release more, hormones in your body. And what the LIST does is it brings the levels down. So you're giving your body a chance to recover while doing the physical activity. Yoga, great example. And then breath work. So, I've done 2 breath work examples for you. So I think you probably get that. Watch your sleep, watch your screen time. And then lastly, I want to say that a low carb diet actually releases cortisol